Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. I'm literally so thrilled you're tuning in. Today, look, we're stepping away from the whole fear-driven headline cycle, and we're leaning straight into proactive discovery and hard science. We're going to dive into the 2026 global watch list of emerging viral threats. But, and this is a really cool part, more importantly, we're unpacking the incredible global pathogen defense plan being engineered right now to protect us all. It's just a fascinating look at how human ingenuity is stepping up to the plate to meet the challenges of the natural world. Now, what is the next pandemic? I mean, it's the ultimate question, right? And look, I know we all have a bit of residual fatigue from the last few years, totally understandable. But we are actually pivoting today. We're not here to dwell on the past. We are here to figure out exactly how global health organizations are answering this exact question right now, way before a crisis actually hits. So to understand the what, we first kind of have to understand the why. Why are we even seeing a shift in the viral landscape for 2026? Well, the macro drivers, they're honestly all around us. A warmer planet literally extends the reach of insects. Human encroachment, deforestation, they push us closer and closer to wildlife. Add in our hyper-connected, rapid global travel networks, and it's just easier than ever for a localized zoonotic spillover, where a virus jumps from an animal to a human, to just hitch a ride and spread across the globe in basically no time at all. Okay, so here's our roadmap for today. We are going to look at the shifting viral landscape, familiar foes like flu and mpox, the creeping threats of Oropouche and SFTV, a high-stakes warning on the Nipah virus, and then finally, we'll wrap up with the pathogen defense plan. All right, let's dive into this. Section 1, the shifting viral landscape, the catalyst for 2026. The absolutely crucial point here is that viruses, they aren't static. They are highly opportunistic. Because of climate change and deforestation, we are literally moving our backyards right into their natural habitats. This massive environmental disruption is forcing humans and animals into really close proximity. And that proximity is directly causing the global rise in infectious zoonotic diseases that researchers are tracking so closely right now. Moving on to Section 2, familiar foes, the evolving knowns. So the plot twist here is that, we all know influenza A, but the concern right now has really shifted to a very specific strain, H5N1, basically the infamous bird flu. Now, this was originally found in humans back in 1997 in China, but it mostly just stayed in birds. Recently, though, H5N1 actually crossed a huge biological barrier right into cattle herds. It's actively spreading through U.S. dairy cows right now, and we've actually seen documented cow-to-human transmission. So while human-to-human spread isn't really efficient yet, thankfully, virologists are on massive high alert because this virus is clearly demonstrating a brand new ability to adapt to mammals. And we're seeing a really similar evolution with another familiar foe, mpox. Just look at the stark contrast between these two recent strains. Back in 2022, we dealt with Clade 2. That was a milder strain, spread mostly through pretty close physical contact. But mpox is back on the watch list, and this time it's because of Clade I. This is a much more severe strain emerging really rapidly right now between 2024 and 2026. It's spreading quietly in Central Africa, and wild enough, cases have even popped up in the US among people with absolutely zero travel history. It totally requires our immediate attention because it's just a harder to track, far more dangerous variation. All right, Section 3, creeping threats, blurring borders. So we're currently tracking two really stealthy viruses that are expanding geographically, mostly due to changing bug seasons. First up is sloth fever, which is caused by the Oropouche virus. That one's transmitted by midges and mosquitoes and is expanding super rapidly into the Americas and the Caribbean. And second, there's SFTS, caused by the Dobby virus. This one is carried by ticks and is currently moving really fast through agricultural systems over in Asia. Both of these are perfect examples of how vectors, the actual bugs carrying the disease, are taking full advantage of these new, much warmer climates. Let's look a little closer at Oropouche. Historically, this was kind of considered a neglected tropical disease. It was mostly confined to the Amazon rainforest, usually just causing a brief fever. But the explosive outbreak from 2023 to 2025, it completely changed the game. The virus expanded its borders into the Caribbean and started bringing terrifying new clinical features with it, stuff like lethal hemorrhagic fever and really severe neonatal abnormalities, like microcephaly. The big takeaway here is that the tiny no-see-um midges that carry Oropouche, they are incredibly common all throughout North America. And that is exactly why scientists are watching this creeping threat so incredibly carefully. Now, what's really interesting here is the sheer scale of undetected viral spread. This data is from the first nationwide surveillance of the tick-borne SFTS virus in Taiwan. Just look at the prevalence rates in domestic farm animals. 60% of sheep and over 28% of both beef cattle and goats tested positive for SFTSV RNA. Because the animals themselves often just stay asymptomatic, the virus kind of circulates silently between the ticks and the livestock. But for humans, SFTS causes a really severe fever with a surprisingly high fatality rate. So it's become this major, totally hidden occupational hazard for farmers and veterinarians. Which leads us to Section 4. High-stakes warning, the Nipah virus. I kind of just want to let this stark mortality rate sit for a second. 40 to 75%. That is the estimated death rate for humans infected with the Nipah virus. It's a number that just immediately anchors you to the absolute extreme severity of this pathogen. It really underscores exactly why Nipah is a massive, high-priority target for global health agencies right now. The really scary thing is, the symptoms of Nipah start out deceptively broad. It typically begins with a sudden flu-like illness and a fever. Then, that can progress really rapidly to pneumonia and respiratory problems. But the third symptom, this is the true hallmark of this deadly infection, is encephalitis, or severe brain inflammation. That usually develops just a few days into the illness. And sadly, even the people who survive are often left with really lasting neurological difficulties. So how does it actually spread? Well, it's a fascinating and honestly a highly specific chain of transmission. The natural hosts are Pteropus fruit bats over in South Asia. Now, these bats feed on date palms, and while they're eating, they leave behind contaminated saliva or droppings right in the raw date palm sap that local communities are collecting. Then, when humans actually consume this unpasteurized raw juice, which is often known as Kaiser juice, they get infected. And from there, the virus can actually spread person to person through close contact, especially among the caregivers looking after the sick. Okay, let's move to Section 5 and see how this all builds. The Pathogen Defense Plan, Global Preparedness. Now, this is exactly where we pivot from raw threats to the proactive, frankly brilliant scientific response that's happening worldwide. We are literally shining a massive global spotlight on these stealthy viruses. The countermeasures being developed are incredible. The WHO has set up these collaborative open research consortia mapping out R&D roadmaps for 10 entire viral families. You've got CEPI, that's the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations, pushing their 100-day mission to develop safe, effective vaccines within just 100 days of a new threat popping up. And then at a national level, agencies like the UKHSA are out there building safe, pseudotype versions of deadly viruses like Nipah in the lab. This means they can test vaccines safely and rapidly way before the next crisis even hits. This strategy is a massive, massive shift in global science. As Dr. Richard Hatchett, the CEO of CEP, puts it, focusing on entire pathogen families can help us stay ahead of both known risks and emerging threats. We are no longer just playing a game of whack-a-mole, sitting around waiting for a single mutation to surprise us. Actually, scratch that. It's more like by studying whole families of viruses, like the flaviviruses or the henipaviruses, we are proactively building a foundational arsenal of knowledge. And that knowledge can be adapted at lightning speed when we need it. So here's why all of this really matters to us. Because science in a lab, on its own, just isn't enough. The One Health approach is really our ultimate defense strategy. It links human, animal, and ecosystem health all together. As researchers from Tufts University pointed out when talking about the Nipah virus, preventing future epidemics depends really heavily on changing how humans and animals actually share space. It's not just about, eliminating wildlife. Protecting ecosystems and properly managing agricultural overlap, that is exactly how we stop the spillover right at the source. Which brings us to a final, pretty powerful question. With advanced global surveillance tracking ticks in Taiwan, R&D roadmaps for entire viral families, and these 100-day vaccine missions, are we finally ready to outpace nature? We might never completely eliminate the emergence of new viruses, for sure. But the 2026 watch list absolutely shows us that science is shifting from a posture of reaction to a posture of absolute readiness. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Stay curious and keep learning.